Hello, dear viewer. Welcome to our press interview today, and we are privileged to have one of the best political analysts, and is none other than Chris, whom I'll give him an opportunity just to speak on the state of economy. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, my brother.
How is everything?
Not bad,
Yes,
We're
yes.
okay.
Yes.
We can see the country is moving on now, and
Okay.
the economy is stabilizing.
Okay.
Again, my name is Chris Maliongovi. I'm a rights activist and political commentator.
Okay.
And I should say that we are having the negative pangs of poorly run economy, bearing in mind that for the past 10 years, the country was run in a very haphazard, poorly organized models and structures. So basically what I can say is that we're having the negative pangs, and now the positive pangs are coming in, and whenever there is a cold comprehension and a hold comprehension, there is always an element of clashing. Things can burst, and that is why you can see so many Kenyans are complaining about the economy and so on. But there are issues that can be clearly seen that the current administration, the President William Samoei Ruto administration, is trying to stabilize and put structures in place that are likely to improve on the nature of our economy and generally into the household incomes, so that every Kenyan can be able to live a life of substance, a life of that is worth it. So one of the areas that he has pointed out very clearly is the area of housing, affordable housing, so that because food, shelter, and clothing are the basic human needs. Food, we need enough food for us to eat, for us to live, because you eat to live. Then we need clothing, we can't move naked. The days when our ancestors used to put on rags, or perhaps what we can call hides and skins, are long gone. And then there is housing. We need shelter over our heads, and that has been a very great challenge for most of the urban dwellers. It might not be so much a challenge in the villagers, although basically also you can find some households in the villages who don't have shelter, but it's not a very major issue, because that one can be sorted out, bearing in mind that we live in a social environment that enables us to live with one another in an environment of communal setup. But housing in the capitals, city Nairobi, in the cities, Mombasa, Nakuru, Kisumu, we are talking about the other towns, all the way from Lodwar to Loitokitok, from Malindi to Kakamega. We have a problem with housing. That's why we cannot be able to actually create a certain, for instance, rent scheme, a rent scale, where you can know that this amount of money should go to this kind of housing and stuff like that. It's because much of our housing has had issues because it's owned by certain monopolies and so on. So, and then the population itself is not in parity with the available housing and so on. So what I can say is that we really need to work out a formula of how we can be able to harness the issue of housing. And that is why the president, and in his wisdom, and I like the approach they're using, is that someone should be deducted some money. You pay for a house, you pay for a mortgage, houses are built, and then eventually we can have people living in affordable housing. However, we have an issue here. Some of us are thinking that we should have a different approach to this. All of us support the government, and I can say for free that we are in the UDA, we are supporters of the UDA party, and the UDA party is the one that formed this government. However, we are looking at this thing from this perspective. when you tell people to begin paying for housing and the houses are not there, someone begins thinking perhaps there is a scheme, there is a plot to fleece Kenyans of their money. It's a scam, actually. So what we're trying to say is this: why can't we have houses being built first? You can borrow money from anywhere, or we can also bring in PPP, private-public partnership. You can create REITs, real estate investment trusts, sell some shares to certain people and so on. When you get that money, build houses. You can build houses for civil servants, you can build houses for the private sector, business people and stuff like that. You tell them that this is the amount of money you're going to be paying in terms of mortgage for this house. Get into the house, it's a 2-bedroom house. For instance, public servants of a certain job scale can take this house at this amount of money. And then after that, you tell them that this is what you're going to be paying. People in a certain job group take this 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms and stuff like that. Tell them, get into the house, or you can rent it out. I mean, but it's yours. Now we're going to begin deducting from your salary, or we're going to tell you to begin paying mortgage for this, if it's people from the private sector. And you can work out with the banks. If it's people from the private sector, you can work out with the banks on how the modalities of how you're going to raise this money. Because it's going to raise issues with Kenyans, and Kenyans are asking hard questions which we need to answer. Perhaps there are areas where people are not understanding exactly how this model is going to work. But in my opinion, I would suggest that for there to be transparency, for there to be accountability, and for us to eradicate elements of mistrust, because we live in a country where people have been scammed for many, many years, and someone may begin asking questions as to, how did this happen? Why did you? Where are we seeing this? Because some of these payments are going to take very many years, and someone is asking hard questions. How are we going to raise this money? And after we've raised the money, how sure are we that we're going to get those houses? Because it seems to be something in the cosmos. So housing is very important, and people like civil servants, all of them, all civil servants, the police, the prisons, the teachers, the doctors, the military, the intelligence services, everyone needs a house. All civil servants must have a house. This question of people renting for the rest of their lives, and yet you serve the country, you leave these cities and towns having earned nothing, you don't have any property, and even in the villages themselves, you have very big, huge budgets of upkeeps and stuff like that. So all these civil servants need housing, and that is why we are trying to say this, that all the civil servants need housing, people in private sector need housing, and then once you have that culture of saving, young people should start saving at the age of 25, or even some can even start at the age of 19, depending on where you get your money. But begin saving and paying some mortgage of a kind on a scheme that is created by the state. This is the form, fill this form, begin applying for these housing project. And that one will really, really help our country move forward. So we have gray areas which need to be ironed out, and aspects that need to be explained to the public so that they can understand exactly what it is that we are trying to do in terms of the housing issue.
Maybe, sir, just to interrupt you, what is your opinion about taxation? Because most of the Kenyans are now complaining on matters taxation. So what do you have to say about it?
You see, there is something that people don't understand here. Paying taxes is a must. And broadening the tax base is also a very important thing. We need to broaden the tax base. You cannot operate in a country where people are not paying taxes, yet they want services. You want roads, you want electricity, you want water, you want, and we were talking about the water systems, you want railway services, you want, as I talked about, air services, you want education, healthcare, all those things are taken care of by the taxes that we pay. So it's very important that all of us have to pay tax, and if we can, we should broaden the tax base. Remembering very well that during the past regimes, we're talking about the Moi regime, where the tax bracket was quite small, quite compressed. Then Kibaki came and opened up the tax bracket, and other areas of, including ICT, came about. Areas where things now began being automated, and so on. It broadened the sources of taxation. Now, the president, in his wisdom, has thought about increasing some elements in taxation, but however, he has also reduced on certain areas of taxation. We're talking about on matters of agriculture, importation of basic items that are linked to production, elements that are machinery and so on, stuff like that. There are areas where he has reduced the taxation. However, we really need to begin tapping into new areas of taxation. When the colonialists arrived here, Africans were not basically paying tax. They could pay some little things to the kings and the rulers of that time in the colonial, in the old setup, the traditional African setup. There was no taxation of a kind. People just used to work. It was in form of some labor. Someone works and does some labor, and those who are able can bring the harvests to the kings and rulers for their upkeep. And then there was voluntary service into the militaries of the armies of that time. But when the colonialists came in, they realized that perhaps the African needs to be put to task to pay tax. And that is when they came about with hard tax. They came about and the moment they realized that the houses, because you could pay tax for every hut that someone has in their homestead. And the moment people realize that the people are paying tax based on the number of huts you have in the homestead, remember very well that when boys used to grow, they used to be given different huts. And so in a homestead, you could have about 5 huts for the 5 boys, or even 10 for the 10 boys. So what the colonialists decided to do, where is that you tax those houses? But the African became a bit shrewd. They decided to build only one hut. So if the white man comes to begin levying tax, you'll only levy for one hut. Now the white man also came about with the head tax. Anyone who has a head should pay tax. So if you have 5 kids, you'll not evade the tax. You'll have to pay for all of them. And that one forced the African to look for work. And where do we look for this job? From the white settlers' farms. That is where you could get these jobs. Now, taxation in itself is, if well managed, if the taxes are going to be well managed, is likely to spur growth. How do you spur growth? You put in place social economic infrastructure that might attract foreign direct investment, that might give impetus, for instance, in the education sector. If you're going to put money in technical education, many young people are going to be trained. Many of them are going to create self-employment. At the end of the day, money will have come into the system, and that money is used to grow the economy. So I don't have any problem with taxation. Create the taxation to create jobs, and there's nothing wrong with that, because there is no way we're going to run this country without taxation. The moment you rely on borrowing, because there's been a lot of borrowing in this country, our borrowing, in fact, every other time Parliament sets a cap that this is where we cannot exceed, and tomorrow we discover that we've exceeded. So what do? We have to borrow again and again and again. Some countries, and we compare ourselves to some foreign countries that have borrowed about 200% to GDP. But some of those countries are well managed, countries like Japan and so on. Ours, we borrowed for wastefulness. And that is where we got it wrong. And so, in my opinion, I say that it's okay. Let's pay tax, then create the enabling environment for the tax to spur growth. That way, I think our country will be able to move forward. Yes.
counties are about to close up, and governors actually are complaining that money has not been disbursed to counties. What is your take on that, sir?
You see, when the Kenya Kwanza administration came in, there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of lack of accountability of which amount of money was given where and what. Because people actually, you need to come in and make an audit of what projects were there in the counties, because the national government sends money to the county governments. But you find that some of these projects are not actually viable projects. They were voodoo projects. Some of these places had ghost workers and stuff like that. I was looking at the other report the other day. The governor from Kisii was having an audit of the staff on his of the members of his staff in the county government of Kisii. They had chaos in that county. So many staff members, many of whom were either ghost workers or they're actually related to some of the previous governors and stuff like that. So, which means there was no transparency in hiring. That is just one area where a government, a national government, must ask for accountability, because every other day we have audit reports being written by the registrar of, by the audit of budget. They write reports. This is what is happening. This is what is happening in this country and stuff like that. If you read some of those reports, they'll give you damning impression as to what is going on in those countries. So I think that the delay per se of money being disbursed to the counties might not be so much related to lack of commitment by the national government or the Kenya Kwanza to begin to disburse money, or perhaps they are not committed to the devolution agenda. No, we need some audit. We really need to know what money is being sent where, because you cannot just keep sending money to the counties. Money that is not being well utilized is going to wastefulness and stuff like that. So we need first of all an audit, and then we need to see what is it that these counties are raising in their own revenue collections, so that government can now top up, or we really need to know what is the contribution of the county government and then the national government, who is contributing what to, and what is it you're taxing, for instance, what are services you're offering to your people and stuff like that. We can't just keep operating in a vacuum. And so I want to think that one of the reasons, because this government has just come into place, one of the reasons why this money might not have been sent to the county governments is that we really need to iron out the gray areas into how taxpayers' money, because you might find someone is crying foul in Garissa, but you're crying foul in Garissa. You should know that the taxpayer in Kiambu, in Kakamega, is contributing to the national income figures, of which money is pulled from there to pay for your services in Garissa. So how do you explain to this person in Kakamega that his money is being used well in Garissa, or that person in Kilifi County, that his money is being used well in Siaya? So these are very serious issues. So we need to iron out on that and see how this country moves forward. Yes.